Most people have no idea how much food they're throwing away for no reason at all. They see a date on a label and they panic. They toss it in the trash. And they never stop to ask if that date actually means anything. Here's the truth nobody talks about. A huge number of things sitting in your kitchen right now don't expire. Not really. Not the way you think. I didn't believe this either, until I started checking things myself. What I found changed the way I shop completely. Today, I'm walking you through 18 foods that basically never go bad. Some of these will surprise you. One of them, number 7, is something almost everyone has in their kitchen, and almost nobody realizes how valuable it actually is. You won't believe number 7. Stick around, because by the end of this, you're going to look at your pantry completely differently. And if you're the kind of person who likes knowing things before everyone else catches on, go ahead and subscribe now, because this is exactly the kind of content I share every week. Let's get into it. Item number 1. Raw honey. Honey is where this whole obsession started for me. Archaeologists have found jars of honey in ancient tombs that were still perfectly edible after thousands of years. That's not an exaggeration. That's documented fact. The reason is simple. Honey has almost no water content, and it's naturally acidic. Bacteria and microorganisms simply can't survive in it long enough to spoil it. I actually had a jar of honey in my cabinet that I forgot about for almost 3 years. I found it while cleaning, fully expected to toss it, and instead found it slightly crystallized, but completely fine. A few seconds in warm water, and it was liquid again, like nothing had happened. If your honey crystallizes, don't throw it away. Just warm the jar gently in hot water. Store it in a cool, dark cabinet, sealed tightly, and it will outlast almost everything else in your kitchen. This is one of those quiet money leaks. People rebuy honey constantly, thinking the old jar is bad, when it's usually completely fine. Item number 2. White rice. White rice, stored properly, can last decades. The reason comes down to processing. White rice has had the outer husk and germ removed, which is exactly the part of the grain that goes rancid over time. Without that layer, there's very little left that can spoil. Emergency preparedness organizations have documented white rice remaining safe and nutritious after 20, even 30 years in proper storage conditions. When I first read that number, I honestly thought it had to be wrong. So I looked into how preppers and long-term food storage communities actually store it, and the method is surprisingly simple. Sealed containers, minimal oxygen exposure, and a cool, dry space. If you buy rice in bulk, transfer it into an airtight container with an oxygen absorber if you can. Keep it away from heat and moisture. Skip this step and it can attract pests, so don't get lazy with the storage part. This is one of those items where a small investment in Costco or Sam's Club now can quietly save you money for years. Item number 3. Salt is a mineral. It was never alive, so there's nothing in it to decompose. Table salt, sea salt, kosher salt, all of it is chemically stable indefinitely. The only thing that can go wrong is if it gets contaminated with moisture or other ingredients get mixed in. Food safety researchers consistently list salt as having an indefinite shelf life, right alongside sugar and pure honey. I actually called a family member who worked in food service for over a decade just to ask about this. She laughed and told me, restaurants never worry about old salt because there's nothing to worry about. Buy salt in bulk if the price is right. Store it in a dry container, away from humidity, and it will genuinely outlive you. This one item alone shows how much of what we assume about expiration is really just assumption, not science. Item number 4. Granulated sugar behaves almost exactly like salt. It's another one of those ingredients that doesn't support bacterial growth because it draws moisture away from anything trying to grow in it. Properly sealed, granulated white sugar has no real expiration point. It might harden or clump over time, but that's a texture issue, not a safety issue. Culinary schools teach this early on because bakers rely on old stock all the time without any issue. I keep a large container of sugar that I bought almost 2 years ago during a bulk sale. It's a little clumpy now, but a quick break-up with a fork, and it's exactly as usable as the day I bought it. Buy sugar when it's on sale, store it in a sealed, dry container, and stop worrying about the date on the bag. It's one of the safest bulk purchases you can make. Item number 5. Pure vanilla extract. This one genuinely surprised me the first time I looked into it. Pure vanilla extract has an alcohol content high enough to act as a natural preservative. That alcohol base means bacteria essentially cannot grow in it. Manufacturers put expiration dates on the bottle mostly for quality tracking, not because the product becomes unsafe. Flavor experts have pointed out for years that vanilla extract, kept sealed, can last indefinitely. I found a bottle of vanilla extract in the back of my cabinet that had to be at least 4 years old. I used it in a batch of cookies out of curiosity, fully expecting a difference. I genuinely could not tell it apart from a brand new bottle. Stock up on real vanilla extract when you see it discounted, especially around the holidays. Keep the cap tight and store it away from direct light, and it will be ready whenever you need it. Just make sure it's pure extract, not imitation, since imitation vanilla has a different shelf life profile. Item number 6. Cornstarch. Cornstarch is a dry, refined starch with essentially no moisture, which means there's nothing for mold or bacteria to latch onto. As long as it stays dry, cornstarch remains stable and usable indefinitely. It's one of the most overlooked pantry staples in terms of shelf life. Home economics resources routinely list cornstarch alongside salt and sugar as an item with no real expiration concern. I actually tested an old box that had been sitting since a Thanksgiving 2 years prior. It thickened a sauce exactly the way it was supposed to. No clumping, no smell, nothing off about it. The only real threat to cornstarch is moisture. If it gets wet even once, throw it out, because that opens the door to mold. Otherwise, keep it sealed in a dry cabinet and stop replacing it every year out of habit. Item number 7. Distilled white vinegar. Here's the one I told you about. Number 7. And I promise, this one changes how you think about your entire kitchen. Distilled white vinegar is acidic enough that it's essentially self-preserving. Nothing can grow in it. Not bacteria, not mold, nothing. What really got me is realizing how many uses it has beyond cooking. It's a natural cleaning agent, a fabric softener alternative, a weed killer, an odor remover, and a descaling agent for coffee makers and kettles. One bottle can replace half a dozen products under your sink. I spoke with someone who worked in a commercial kitchen for years, and she told me they never worried about vinegar going bad. Ever. It might change color slightly over time, or develop a harmless cloudy sediment called mother, but it's still completely safe and effective. This is the item I wish I'd understood years ago. Buy white vinegar in bulk. It's cheap, it lasts forever, and it quietly replaces a shocking number of things you're currently paying separately for. If you're only using vinegar for salad dressing, you are seriously underusing one of the most versatile products in your entire house. Item number 8. Soy sauce. Soy sauce is fermented, which already gives it a head start on shelf stability. On top of that, it's extremely high in sodium, which acts as a natural preservative the same way salt does on its own. Unopened, soy sauce can last for years past any printed date. Even opened and refrigerated, it remains usable far longer than most people assume. Food scientists point to the combination of fermentation and salt content as the reason soy sauce rarely, if ever, actually spoils in a way that makes it unsafe. I had a bottle in my fridge that I'd genuinely forgotten about, tucked behind other condiments. When I found it, I checked the date, braced myself, and it was still completely fine, smell and taste included. Don't toss soy sauce just because a date has passed. Give it a smell test, check for any unusual separation or mold on the surface, and if it looks and smells normal, it's almost certainly fine to use. Item number 9. Powdered milk. This one flies under the radar constantly, but it's a staple of every long-term food storage list for a reason. Powdered milk has had nearly all of its moisture removed, which is what makes regular milk spoil so quickly in the first place. Without that moisture, bacteria have almost nothing to work with. Properly sealed and stored in a cool location, powdered milk can remain safe for well over a decade, sometimes even longer, in nitrogen-packed containers. I only started using it after a friend who's into emergency preparedness introduced me to it. I was skeptical about the taste at first, but in cooking and baking, it's honestly indistinguishable from regular milk. Keep it in an airtight container away from heat and light. It's one of the most practical bulk buys you can make, especially if you bake often or want a backup in case regular milk isn't available. Item number 10. Pure maple syrup. Real maple syrup, unlike the imitation corn syrup version, has a naturally high sugar concentration that resists bacterial growth almost entirely. Unopened, it can sit in your pantry indefinitely. Once opened, it should move to the fridge, but even then, it lasts far longer than most people expect, often over a year with no issue. Producers and food storage guides consistently note that any mold that occasionally forms on the surface can simply be skimmed off, and the syrup underneath remains completely safe. I had a bottle in the fridge that sat untouched for almost a year after the holidays. There was a small amount of surface discoloration. I scraped it away, and the syrup itself was exactly as good as the day I bought it. If you see real maple syrup on sale, especially around fall, it's worth stocking up. Just remember to refrigerate it once it's open, and don't panic over minor surface changes. Item number 11. Hard liquor. Distilled spirits like vodka, whiskey, rum, and gin have alcohol content high enough that nothing can grow in them. Unopened, these products essentially never expire. Even opened, the quality might shift slightly over years due to oxidation, but they remain completely safe to drink. This is different from wine or beer, which do have real shelf lives because of lower alcohol content and different chemical makeup. I asked someone who used to manage a bar about this, since I always assumed liquor had some kind of limit. She told me bottles sit on shelves for years without anyone thinking twice about it, and it's completely standard in the industry. If you enjoy having a stocked bar at home, buying quality spirits when there's a sale is a genuinely smart move. Store bottles upright, away from direct sunlight, and they'll be exactly the same whenever you're ready to use them. Item number 12. Dried pasta. Dried pasta is made from wheat and water, then dried down to a very low moisture level, which is what gives it such a long shelf life in the first place. Properly stored in a sealed container, dried pasta can remain safe to eat for years beyond the printed date, often with little to no noticeable difference in quality. Culinary sources consistently note that pasta's biggest enemy isn't time, it's exposure to moisture or pests, not spoilage in the traditional sense. I once found a box of pasta pushed to the back of a cabinet that had to be at least 2 years old. I cooked it expecting a strange texture. It cooked up completely normal, no issues at all. Buy pasta in bulk when the price drops. Transfer it to airtight containers if the box itself isn't resealable, and stop assuming a past date means it's unsafe. Item number 13. Bouillon cubes and powder. Bouillon is essentially dehydrated, salted flavoring, which puts it in the same long-lasting category as salt itself. The extremely low moisture content combined with high sodium levels means bacteria simply can't establish themselves. Sealed bouillon can remain usable for years past any printed date. Home cooking references frequently mention bouillon as one of the most underrated long shelf life staples in a typical kitchen. I keep a jar of bouillon powder specifically for emergencies and quick meals, and I've used cubes that were well over a year past the printed date without a single issue in flavor or safety. Keep bouillon in a sealed container away from moisture. It's an inexpensive way to add flavor to soups, rice, and vegetables, and it barely takes up any space in your pantry. Item number 14. Cocoa powder. Cocoa powder is dry, low in moisture, and naturally resistant to bacterial growth, which puts it firmly in the long shelf life category. Over time, cocoa powder may lose a bit of its intensity and flavor, but it does not become unsafe. This is a quality issue, not a safety issue, and the difference matters. Baking resources note that cocoa powder stored properly in a sealed, dry container can remain usable for several years past any printed date. I had a container that sat in my baking cabinet for well over 2 years. The colour and smell were still rich and normal, and it worked perfectly in a batch of brownies without any noticeable difference. Store cocoa powder in an airtight container, away from heat and light, and don't feel pressured to replace it just because a date has technically passed. Item number 15. Whole black peppercorns. Whole peppercorns last dramatically longer than pre-ground pepper, and most people don't realize how big that difference actually is. Because the outer shell of the peppercorn hasn't been broken, the essential oils inside are protected from oxidation. Ground pepper loses potency within months, while whole peppercorns can remain flavorful for years. Spice industry sources consistently recommend whole peppercorns specifically because of how much longer they retain flavor compared to pre-ground versions. I switched from ground pepper to a pepper grinder with whole peppercorns a while back, mostly for taste, but I quickly realized I was also saving money because I wasn't replacing it nearly as often. If you're buying pepper regularly, whole peppercorns with a grinder are both more flavorful and more economical over time. It's a small switch that quietly adds up. Item number 16. Canned low-acid vegetables. Canned goods, particularly low-acid vegetables like corn, green beans, and carrots, have shelf lives that go far beyond the printed date, as long as the can itself stays intact. The canning process itself is designed to eliminate bacteria and seal out oxygen, which is what allows these foods to remain safe for years, sometimes even a decade, past the date on the label. Government food safety guidance has repeatedly confirmed that canned goods remain safe indefinitely as long as the can isn't bulging, leaking, rusted through, or severely dented. I went through my pantry once and found several cans that were 3 to 4 years past their printed date. Every single one opened normally, smelled normal, and looked completely fine. Check your cans for damage before eating from them, but don't automatically toss something just because a date has passed. The date is about peak quality, not safety. Item number 17. Instant coffee. Instant coffee, especially freeze-dried varieties, has extremely low moisture content, which makes it remarkably resistant to spoiling. Sealed and stored properly, instant coffee can remain usable for years, occasionally leaning on strength or aroma, but nowhere close to actually going bad. Coffee industry sources note that unlike fresh ground coffee, which loses quality within weeks, instant coffee's processing method dramatically slows that decline. I kept a jar of instant coffee as a backup for over a year without touching it. When I finally opened it, it tasted almost identical to a freshly opened jar, just slightly less aromatic. If you keep instant coffee as a backup or for convenience, don't feel rushed to use it up quickly. Store it sealed, away from moisture, and it will be ready whenever you need it. Item number 18. Bulk dried beans. Dried beans, whether black beans, pinto beans, lentils, or chickpeas, are one of the most classic long-term pantry staples for a reason. Their extremely low moisture content makes them resistant to spoilage almost indefinitely, though they may take slightly longer to cook and soften the older they get. Long-term food storage guides consistently list dried beans as one of the most reliable, budget-friendly staples for stocking a pantry that's meant to last. I keep a rotating stock of dried beans specifically because they're cheap, filling, and versatile. I've cooked beans that were well over a year old, and while they needed a bit more soak time, the flavor and safety were completely unaffected. Buy dried beans in bulk when you see a good price. Store them in a sealed container, away from moisture, and you'll always have an affordable, protein-rich staple ready to go. Here's the pattern behind everything you just heard. Almost every single item on this list lasts because of one of three things: low moisture, high acidity, or high sugar and salt content. Once you understand that pattern, you start looking at your entire pantry differently. Most of us were trained to trust a printed date without ever asking what that date actually represents. In most cases, it's about peak quality, not safety. That single distinction can save you real money every single month. This isn't about hoarding, and it isn't about panic. It's about knowing which items are genuinely worth stocking up on, so you're not caught paying full price later, or throwing away food that was never actually bad in the first place. Most people are going to keep tossing perfectly good food and rebuying the same items over and over. You don't have to be one of them. If this changed the way you think about your own pantry, hit subscribe, because I share content like this every week, the kind of insider knowledge most people find out way too late. Drop a comment and let me know which item on this list surprised you the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.